even this, here, I'll hit the button. Yeah. So like even
All
this, like
right.
he's as soon as I hit the record button, it's like in my
Yep.
head. Yeah.
All right. It's
But
go time.
yeah. But anyway, so you were I guess this so I guess I should just give it an introduction first. That would be smarter of me. So I'm here with Fleetwood Haddock. Is that how it's pronounced that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you had reached out to me through the Spirit Box Discord server when I put out this call to just basically talk to people more in the mystical side or occult practices, things like that. And you practice tarot, and you said you recently just started teaching it actually as well, right?
hmm Yep. Just recently started doing that through a random series of events. Got a student that wanted to learn from me, and yeah, I figured uh, sounds like at least one person wants to hear what I have to say about the tarot, so maybe some other people do too.
Yeah, well, I'm extremely interested. I'm really glad you reached out because it's just it's been something I've been interested in a while, but I've never really dug into it very deeply. I think what really appeals to me a lot is the images on the cards. I just find them really
hmm
fascinating and everything.
Yeah, and there's so many different rabbit holes to go down just with the images and like the symbolism and just all the different archetypes that the tarot represents. Um,
Yeah.
that's one thing that really fascinates me about it is how, these images that, well, I guess the ones that people are most common with the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. It's just kind of the most famous one, I suppose.
Is that the one
Um,
when you did the reading for me? Was that the one in the middle one? That was
yes, that was the
okay,
middle
okay.
row.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I've seen that
Yep.
one before.
hmm
Yeah.
and that one, the images on it, even though they were drawn, 100 years ago or so, they still managed to capture like so many aspects of human life that are just so, I don't know, ubiquitous for everybody.
Yeah, they're really cool
Um,
looking.
yeah. And
Yeah.
um, but yeah, that's something we could get into if you want the
Is
the
that
different ways to interpret the cards or um just the different like how they go on to the Kabbalistic tree of life.
that
Um
would be, that would be fun. I'm gonna put a note right here in my phone so that way I remember that too. Um, but yeah, because I mean I'd love to get into that different ways imaging. Sorry, I'm just
no, you're good.
but yeah, so is that what drew you to the cards was just seeing the images mostly or
Yeah, so I actually got started with the book Tarot for Dummies, which
oh
was published alongside the rest of the For Dummies series. Someone kind of gave it to me as a joke back when I was, I think, 19 or 18. Um, and that was really my first introduction to it. And it's funny because I've gone back, I still have the book, and that it came with a Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. And that's still one of
oh
the decks that I have, my very first one.
that's
But
cool.
it's been through a lot. I carried it around in my pocket for a couple years. Would
Dang,
just randomly pull cards all the time.
that's fun. So when your friend got it for you, was there a reason why, or was it just like a total random joke, or?
So, I was at that point in what I like to call my militant atheist phase,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
where I was like very into like Richard Dawkins and folks like that that were just like, yeah, religion's stupid. Any sort of spirituality is a waste of time. Because I grew up very religious
Yeah.
and was one of the people that just completely balked against that in my early teens when I was around 14. Um, just decided that all of that was wrong and I knew better than the world,
Yeah.
like many teenagers can. Um, but so my friend at the time was very similar in that regard. Um, and we would often get each other joke gifts for Christmas or birthdays and stuff. And he thought that Tarot for Dummies would be a perfect gift for me. And it was, but not in the way that he had originally intended.
So what did
Um,
he say when you started getting into it then? Like actually seriously
well,
thinking about
yeah, I had a kid when I was 20, and fairly recently 20, and that kind of drifted me apart from most of my friends, him included. And it was probably when I was stuck at home, the book and the deck kind of sat on the shelf for about a year or so until I was taking care of my kid and just looking for stuff to do. Didn't have internet at the time. Was relatively poor, I guess you'd say, but you know was really into video games and reading and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and I was like, well, why not? I'll give this a shot, and turned out to be really fascinating and kind
Yeah.
of scratched an itch that I wasn't willing to admit I had. I think looking back, because religion did do stuff for me. I have a lot of good memories of going to church, and some of the experiences I had there were some of the most important spiritual experiences I had growing up. Um, but like I said, for a while there, I was not willing to admit that to myself at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, tarot was really my bridge back into any sort of spirituality. Um, and for years, I really came at it from a purely psychological point of view. Um, I had read a lot of stuff, not a lot of Carl Jung, but enough Carl Jung to really like the whole idea of archetypes, and how, in a non-mystical way, just there's the same way that you can have like a doppelganger person out there, like someone that looks just like you, but that you've never met before.
Yeah.
Um, there's only so many faces, there's only so many experiences that people will have. And I like the idea originally of just looking at it and as a way to reflect my own subconscious, kind of back up to me. Um, and I
Yeah.
still sort of see it that way, but obviously my views on it have gotten a lot more, I guess, mystical or spiritual since then.
Can you So I mean, I do want to get in your backstory at some point too, but
Yeah.
could you describe some of that? Like what you said it used to be more psychological, which I think, like you said, you still believe in it, that it does work that way as well. But what shifted that it made you think it's more spiritual too? Was it encountering
Um,
some sort of spirits or just what? I mean, how would you, I guess, talk
it's
about that?
hard to say, and I think a lot of people that I've heard talk about tarot will kind of say the same thing that have come from my point of view, or the point of view that I had back then. Is the more you mess with it, it just gets harder and harder to um assign it as just psychological. There starts it's the tarot is kind of like a synchronicity machine,
Oh, wow.
um, in the sense that there's so many things that look like things that you'll see in dreams or in real life situations, that once you get familiar enough with the cards, especially across like multiple decks, because I guess because I'm in my mid 30s now. The journey was quite long through my and slow to start through my 20s. Um, but like there's just certain cards that kept coming up for me in ways that became more and more and more meaningful over time, that different aspects of them that really spoke to me. And when I a few years ago really started to learn meditation, one of the first things I did was learn about meditating on the cards. And like, um, there's a really fun meditation with them where you can just kind of hold it up or have it sitting somewhere in front of you and just get lost in the image, almost like pulling yourself into it. Um, like I like to do the idea of like if it was a frame, just like kind of slowly thinking of it as more 3D and trying to see what was around the corners of the frame in my imagination.
That's
So it
cool.
was um like the scene really opens up and he it's I don't know, it's a really fun exercise, both just as a meditation and for learning the cards and different things that they have to say. But that, I mean, that's really what it is. It's the once you learn the language of it, and that's really what learning the tarot is. It's like um, a visual alphabet, and once you learn that language, it it just starts speaking to you. I don't.
Yeah.
It's hard to put it in other words, but it you know the same way I can go to a friend and ask for advice, I can pull out a deck of cards and get advice from it. And
Yeah.
it's just uncanny. It's really uncanny. Like even I don't know if I you cool with me talking about the reading I did for
Oh
you.
yeah. 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 Totally.
Yeah. Um just how consistent it was across three different decks of cards and three different rows, how both it was like everything on there was pointing in the same direction, and that's not something you always see with a tarot reading where it's just like three different ways of saying the same thing across the nine cards. But it was really fascinating,
Yeah. It was
and
really
it's a
cool.
fun reading to do.
Yeah, I definitely love to get into that more for sure because I have questions about that as well that have to do with I
Hmm.
think everything you're talking about too, just even the images because the way you interpret things, I'm just like I'm sitting here and I'm like, how on earth is this be like? How do you know? Um, but I guess like you said, it's a language of images. So once you know kind of I guess the symbols and what they at least somewhat represent, then you can kind of
Hmm.
hear it speaking a little more. But anyways, I before I guess we get into that, I really would like to I guess maybe hear for well for myself and for people I guess that'll listen to this, just more of your background and stuff, your history, like how you you said you grew up really religious and maybe some of that journey, and then I mean you kind of
Yeah.
talked about a little bit of what led you into the tarot,
Yeah.
but I guess take a
In and
step back.
out through there. Yeah. So I grew up just knowing my mom. My dad was kind of out of the picture before I was making memories. Um, and the it's weird. I'm kind of like this male raised by females,
Yeah.
in a male dominated society.
Yeah.
And even though I'm mainly, a cis male, I feel like that's given me some interesting perspectives on things. Um, but with a single mom, it was real important to her that we went to church every Sunday, and she found when I was around 5 or 6, I think, um, found this Lutheran church in the middle of the city. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, um, and it was where we went to church and like kind of found community while I was growing up. Um, well, really, like even after I was out of the house, my mom kept going to that church. But it's a Missouri Synod Lutheran version of Christianity, which I
Okay.
don't know if you're familiar with that,
No,
but
not at all.
it is
What is
it's
that?
a so it's Lutheran Protestantism,
Okay.
which it is like are you familiar with Baptists? And
Yeah.
so Lutheran is kind of like the opposite of Baptist,
Okay.
where instead of like you can have like rapture and kind of speaking in tongues, and like the Baptists believe you can be overtaken with spirit,
Yeah.
Lutheran kind of boiled down is like, no, you get there by plodding along one step at a time and just keeping your head down and praying every day.
Gotcha.
Um, and it comes from, I think, if I remember correctly, German settlers in Missouri kind of made this own branch of Lutheranism. And
Missouri, and it ended up in Richmond, Virginia.
yeah,
Nice, nice.
yeah. Well, and it's this really cool old church that like the roof of the church is still the bones of the boat that brought over the organ from
What?
Germany.
That's
So the
crazy.
the organ in this church is older than the United States.
No
Um,
way. That's
yeah, it's
awesome.
this, yeah. And so I just grew up in this like really old religion style kind of church.
Yeah.
And it was weird for me because like I know now I'm someone that really experiences embodied like spiritual ecstasy sometimes, and
Yeah.
that's really not something that's supposed to happen there. Um, but
Gotcha.
it uh there's a couple real big experiences that I had, which one was becoming aware of the time that like I believe I witnessed this. I don't have any direct memories of it, but um there was a time when a assistant pastor was kind of filling in for the main pastor, and there was this older gay gentleman in the congregation that I just remember him as a little kid as being like the nicest guy there.
Yeah.
And but he was gay, and you know, this is like the early 90s, and it definitely was not as accepted as it is now. And while the main pastor of the church, you know, didn't have any issues with it, this assistant pastor who's also like on the board of the church and stuff got up and apparently would not stop doing his sermon about the sins of homosexuality until this man in the congregation got up and left. And like, you know, basically in the service kicked out
Wow.
this man from the church.
Oh my goodness.
And again, while I don't necessarily remember that, like I remember learning about it very vividly and how like just oh, that's why that guy isn't here anymore. What a shame. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
and you know, I also had a like it's kind of a weird family dynamic. I was still in touch with my dad's family growing up because like when my dad left, he kind of left his whole family as well as my mom and I. Um, and so like my granddad was still in the picture and took care of me a lot so that my mom could work like weekends and stuff like that to make ends meet. But he was unfortunately super racist.
Your
And
granddad?
yeah,
Oh yes.
and
Sometimes a racist grandparent's like the best thing. No. It's so
it, he had a kind of a mean streak about it, but you know, it was around the same time that I was realizing how racist my granddad was and realizing my church was homophobic, and it was
Oh
like
yeah.
all my heroes were
Oh, that's
becoming
not good.
evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I stopped going to church with my mom for a while, and um you know, where I had previously participated in the youth group a lot, like all the way up through ninth grade and stuff, I stopped doing that. And I think it was in 10th grade, I went back and went in for a lock-in where you would spend the night in the church with the other
Ah,
like
yeah, I've done
teenagers and
those.
stuff.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Overnight
Um,
lock-in.
and
Those are fun.
me and the youth minister wound up having this like really deep heart to heart about like because at this point I was about ready to say like I don't believe in God anymore. I just remember we had this really deep conversation, stayed up till like 4 in the morning, literally just
Sounds
talking in the church.
sounds like a lock-in.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the next morning I went to the service as usual, and just something came over me. Um, like I literally had like you know, I was, I guess you'd say, moved by the Holy Spirit or something that I think would be more common in other sects of Christianity. But, you know, my pastor, bless his heart, did everything he could for me. But I was literally like shaking and speaking in tongues and like, um, just kind of overcome with the Lord, I guess you
Yeah.
would say. And it like it was a super intense experience. Like I'm sure it had to do with the lack of sleep and um, you know, just the whole conversation that we'd had. But when I finally started to come down from it, I guess you'd say, my mom and I left the church, and I'll never forget on the way back home, I literally had like, I consider it my first vision where like I just totally was unaware of what was going on and was just saw this blindingly bright light, and Jesus Christ himself, or so I thought at the time, was right there and like his back facing me. And I was just like looking up, like, oh my God, literally. And he turns around, like, kind of looks over his shoulder back at me and just goes, "You're not one of mine."
Whoa.
And it was like a switch flipped. It was just like all that light and holiness that I was feeling and the vision that I was seeing turned off in an instant, just
Wow.
vanished. And I was just left feeling so like just emptier than I had ever felt before.
Wow.
Um, and that's what it's so funny. Have you ever seen the movie Dogma?
No, I
Um,
haven't. No.
at the beginning of that movie, there's a scene where a fallen angel played by Matt Damon
Okay.
is
Sounds great.
convincing. Yeah, no, it's a really good movie. If you like religious stuff, it's
Yeah.
it's a really good movie. But opening scene, fallen angel Matt Damon is convincing a nun that there is no God, and like successfully convincing a nun that there is no God. And then he walks back to his other angel, fallen angel buddy, played by Ben Affleck. And it's just like, why do you do that? You literally know that there's God. You've been to heaven. Why are you convincing a nun that there is no God? And it's just like, because I can.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Um,
Dang.
and it's like I would have never called myself that at the time, but looking back on that like militant atheist part of my life, that was so much my motivation to be like, well, God abandoned me, so I'm going to see how many people I can convince to abandon God.
That's crazy interesting. Yeah, because I was thinking where you were going with your story. I was like thinking with the judgmental pastor and the racist grandparent. I was thinking like when you just encounter, or at least that's kind of what happened to me a little bit. I didn't go through any like I always believed in God, but when I kind of left the church and stuff, I think it was seeing the judgmental side and kind of the
Hmm.
where with a racist grandparent you could see kind of like especially if they're hateful, which is like it's one thing if it's just kind of uncultured, it's another thing if they're actually spiteful, and then you see that
Yeah.
your role models and you can easily get resentful and I guess see when you see hypocrisy. And so I was thinking that's where you're going, but it's crazy that a profound mystical experience like was what caused you to be atheist, to not believe in
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Hmm.
that's
No,
that's
it's so
even crazier.
backwards, but that's like, yeah, that is,
So what do you take that to be now?
but,
You think that wasn't like probably an angel, like the fallen angel trying to convince you?
so, I've had, multiple, uh, I guess mystical people. Actually, Robert Peter, he's been
Yeah.
on your show before. He was one of the people that kind of confirmed for me that that was not Jesus. That was like that church's egregore of Jesus.
Ooh,
That
wow.
was was a reflection of the congregation at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Wow.
And for better or worse, I wasn't one of his
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm not like that. Um,
Yeah.
and since then, I've just in the last year, really, I've been able to find a connection with what seems like the real spirit of Jesus Christ. And while I wouldn't ascribe myself to any one religion just because I like too many things from too many different ones.
Yeah, I feel you.
Um, there's a flavor to divinity that just is, I don't know. I really liked you on the Casual Cauldron,
Oh,
was it?
Casual Temple, yeah, with Marilyn.
Casual Temple.
Heard. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
doing a great job over there. She's got some great conversations.
Yeah. Well, I really liked her conversation with you, and that led me to go watch your conversation on her podcast. And I really liked the way that you framed it, actually, where Jesus Christ is like forgiveness incarnate. That's I couldn't agree more. It's been like
Thing.
my experience as I've gotten closer with that again.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way. Man, when I started to come back to Christianity and reading through the scriptures, I can just try to make sense of it all. Once I started
Hmm.
to frame it that way and see basically, yeah, as Christ is the embodiment of God's forgiveness or divine forgiveness or something like that, then it seems like my theology has started to kind of just fall into place and things just made a lot more, became a lot more clear and made more sense, I think. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I had a similar experience with Eastern religion, which I kind of got into through meditating on the tarot. I was like, well,
Yeah.
this is really good. I'm enjoying meditation for the first time as someone with uh, really severe ADHD. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to meditate.
So what
Um,
type of Eastern religion was it? I mean, do you mean tarot specifically or
or no, like, well, I was quote unquote meditating with tarot cards, where
gotcha.
like the focus of the meditation is the card. But and that kind of led me to, well, how else can you meditate? Let me try the breath. And uh there's I think the book is by Daniel Ingram. It's called Mastering the Teachings of the Buddha.
Okay.
And it's like this thick textbook about Buddhism.
Okay.
Um, but just it is incredible to work through.
Really?
Um,
That's cool.
yeah, it's if you've ever wanted to know about Buddhism, like it's literally about because and I think that's what kind of drew me back into religion is I feel like Christianity, or at least the way it's practiced here in America, makes a lot of promises that are gonna happen one day,
Yeah.
like whether it's revelations or heaven after you die or whatnot.
Hmm.
Whereas Buddhism, when you get into it, is very much like, no, do these things, believe in them or not, you'll have these effects. It's
Yeah.
like it's almost scientific in that regard, where there's formula that you follow and you have specific outcomes from following specific formula.
Hmm.
Um, and that really appealed to me in a way
Yeah.
that religions hadn't before. And
Yeah. And Buddhism is the one, I mean, if I remember, it's nirvana, right? That you can achieve. Or is that correct? I think the
there's
state
so
of
many
nirvana.
different, I mean, that's kind of the most basic version of it.
Okay.
um and some people will say that, well, like nirvana means nothingness, but like nirvana is one of those words like soul that
Ah,
there's
that's cool.
like 15 or 20 different words for soul that uh
Wow.
in like Tibetan and in different Asian languages, there's all these different words for soul in the same language, or like
Yeah.
breath or chi or whatever you want to call it. And when we translate all these words into English, they just become the one word soul. It's like
Yeah.
our language just sucks at describing
These
anything
things.
that's not materialist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and once I started to learn more about that, I don't know, just really opened me up um,
Yeah.
into new ways of belief. And then too, just like I said, if you're whether you believe in stuff or not, if you follow some of those formulas in Buddhism, eventually you will have a mystical experience of some kind or another. And
Yeah.
I guess it was kind of in the middle of COVID, um, or maybe just before that. It um, I was kind of brought back into spirituality. Like it switched from being just something that I was doing on the side to being like a main hobby or focus of mine. Um, when I finally had an experience a few years ago of like experiencing total oneness with the universe.
Whoa,
It
tell me
was
about that.
it
That sounds
it
awesome.
was brief. So yeah, it's this um there's this guy named Gimpo Roshi who, if you look into him, he's had unfortunately quite a number of scandals, but his techniques are solid
Oh yeah.
if you can separate the man from the teaching. Um, and following some of his techniques, it's like you talk to different parts of yourself. Like the
That's
one
cool.
that I think you start with is the protector, and you try to embody these different voices where, like, because you have conversations in your head or
Yeah.
like little arguments with people. Well, it's doing that on purpose, essentially, to talk to different parts of yourself. Like the protector is the part of yourself that protects you, and any part of yourself that protects you is the protector. And it goes on to it kind of tricks you into enlightenment, um,
Oh,
because it you go through all these different parts of yourself, and then it says, okay, now let me talk to the part of you that seeks the way. And it's literally there's a part of you that is seeking the way, and it's like,
that's
well,
interesting.
it, this part always seeks the way, so it never can find the way. So let me talk to the way. And like it's literally like a switch flips, and suddenly your brain that and your mind that used to be contained inside your head is now not. And
Whoa,
your experience of self expands beyond the body to include everything.
that's cool.
It really is
That's
like
really neat.
it's
Yeah, I
um
would expect like when I guess when you're, I don't know how you describe that, tapping into some sort of revelation of the way you would experience a oneness with all things. Yeah,
mhm,
the unity of all the multiplicity of life or something like that. That's
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, well, I can send you a YouTube video of his that was like my first introduction to it. It's 2.5 hours long. It is way better listened to than watched in my experience.
Yeah, okay.
Just because it's done in front of a live crowd and some of the people are very distracting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah,
If
definitely
you're
send it
me,
to me.
anyways.
I got a
Yeah.
long drive after this. I got about a 2 hour drive one way,
Oh
so
no,
I
you would
can.
not want to do it while you're driving
Oh,
because
don't.
if it works, then you're gonna leave your body. So don't do it
Okay.
driving.
All right. Okay.
Um, but yeah, it was, I don't know, from that, I just that experience lit this fire in me, and even now, it's. I mean, I'm certainly not a person that gets to just exist in that state.
Hmm.
Um, like I guess the end goal is where you can just be that open all the time, and just exist on the waves of the universe, so to speak.
Yeah,
And I definitely have a hard time doing that. I think being a parent makes that hard,
I
um,
bet.
because it's, you're so responsible for not just your own health
Mm,
and wellness, but a whole nother human's health and wellness in ways that um,
yeah. And you
are
have to
hard to
stay
describe.
grounded too in a weird
Hmm.
way. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I mean, it's really hard for me to be there too. I personally, I tend to fast a lot, and usually because I find that when I'm on a fast, I can kind of feel like I'm at least towing the edge of that kind of
Hmm.
experience. But then there is a weird way, like I do feel like I relate to people less. Not necessarily in a bad way. It's just, I mean, you feel a little bit more disembodied or something. It's hard to explain. Not quite as
Have,
grounded. So,
have you ever been on a retreat?
what do you? What does that mean?
Like
Like
uh
a youth
like
retreat?
where no, like where you would go off up into, usually there's
Oh,
like
okay.
there's a place near where I live called Yogaville, and it's literally this little like villa up in the mountains in Virginia, that
Wow.
you can go spend a weekend up there and fast and meditate around other people that are also fasting and meditating.
No way. That'd be
Um,
fun.
yeah, well, it's a totally different experience than when you do it on your own because
Yeah.
suddenly where it doesn't because at least I'm assuming a couple things here that I know exactly what you're talking about when you say you feel a little bit disconnected from people.
Yeah.
It's it's a very different experience when you're around people that are doing the same thing because you feel a lot more connected
Yeah. Yeah. That
when
would.
you're not around people that are just living their daily lives.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because you'd be in a weird communion without communion or something. Yeah. It's
exactly.
yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I love being on uh communal fasts like that, but I it's pretty rare that it happens. It well within the church circles that I'm familiar with. I'm not in I think it
Hmm.
would happen more if I was in more liturgical churches like Catholics and stuff because they have set days
Yeah.
where they fast, but um that sounds like a lot of fun. That would because that sounds like you'd be especially just out in the woods or something. That sounds amazing to
Yeah.
me. I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. I don't know if we have anything like that around where I am, but so you're still you said that's in Virginia though, where that is?
Hmm.
So you're still in
Yeah.
Virginia at
Yeah.
the
I
time?
still
Okay,
live in
cool.
Richmond.
And Virginia is
I've kind of
beautiful.
it is. It's getting kind of swampy lately.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had um it's been the wettest winter on record, I think.
Oh,
Um
so there's this sorry, this total distraction.
no,
I
yeah,
was
go
wondering
for
I've
it.
been wondering if it's been a result of that though, because either I'm just noticing them and that happens all the time, or it's either one of those things or it's actually just something new this year. But I'll be out driving in the country in like really rural areas and I'll see like these kind of waving hills or whatever, just like an open plain. And I've been seeing a lot of these purple wildflowers that have just been like spot,
Hmm.
like just blanketing the fields this year. I didn't know if it's from the wet, maybe it's from that wet, more moisture or something, or I don't, or maybe it
Yeah.
happens every year. I don't know. Are you getting that where you are? Or?
I actually have some of those flowers coming up in my backyard where it stays real wet. It's just like they're real low to the ground,
Yeah.
just like little purple flowers. Yeah. So I wish I knew more about it.
Yeah, I don't know what they are. I'm like, I don't know if
Yeah.
this is new or I'm just like, I don't know. I've been really enjoying it though, but yeah.
Well, I know there's lots of seeds out there that do wait until like there's a certain level of wetness or dryness to in
Wow.
the soil before they what's it called, sprout.
Yeah. So, well, I don't know. If it's new, that's a plus side to the swampiness, I guess. But
Yeah.
anyway, didn't mean to derail it there, but
No, that's perfect. I want last thing I want to do is go on a podcast and talk about the weather.
well, I had a question too. I can't remember now though. So where did we leave off in your story? You were, um,
Oh yeah. Well, just was talking about a few years ago and
yeah,
what really lit the fire under my butt to be get into spirituality and occultism and stuff.
yeah.
I switched from like listening to 3 or 4 hours of political podcasts every day to listening to 3 or 4 hours of spiritual podcasts every day.
That's a good
Um,
shift.
yeah,
In
no,
my
it
opinion,
definitely
at
has
least.
been way better for me
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, it's
Um,
that stuff I feel like is better for your overall mood because political stuff is just I mean, I try not to throw it out because it's probably there's a weightiness to it that I'm probably like arrogant to not realize or something like that. But it's so divisive that it's just
mhm.
if I get into it, I'll just be in a grump.
Well, that's just online politics. There's
Yeah.
which yeah, I mean, I've found a few things that I still listen to just because they make enough humor out of it.
Oh, that's good.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, the I kind of lost my train of thought there
Sorry.
too.
Yeah, sorry. We were talking. I derailed it again, but you were talking about the you got into it lit a fire under your butt to get into the more
Oh
mystical
yeah,
side. You were listening to more mystical
yeah. Listen to more
podcasts and
mystical
stuff like that.
podcasts, and so there's this one called Adventures in Woo Woo, which I just grabbed me because of the name. It was
Yeah.
like, well, this is as honest as a podcast can be. It's not like
Yeah.
Berkstone and Feathers or something like that. Like it, it's just a person that was relatively materialist and kind of got into stuff the same way I did, named Tommy Kelly. And he doesn't do as much podcast stuff nowadays, but has this really good Patreon and Discord community. And he is the one that made the 40 Servants deck that I used in your reading. They got
Oh,
that
gotcha.
adventure card.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I always kind of poo-pooed the idea of Oracle decks because tarot is where it's at. It's got a history. Oracle decks are kind of similar to tarot, but usually they don't follow the same structure. Um, whereas all tarot decks have like 72 cards in them. They have a minor and major arcana as like two parts of the deck. Oracle decks can just be however many cards and have however many whatever's in them. Like there's angel oracle decks or like fairy oracle decks that people make, all sorts of different ones. But the 40 servants one, they're all it's 40 cards, and each one represents a different servitor that was made by this guy Tommy Kelly for public use, essentially. And that has been one of the most like just pick up and go kind of magical systems that I still have ever found, that led me into working with servitors, which led me into astrology.
So what's a
um,
servitor exactly? I'm not familiar with the term actually.
oh, yeah, no, I should explain that. A servitor is a thought form that you create with a specific intent.
Okay,
Um, so it's,
that's interesting. So when you pull the
yeah,
card and you're pulling that, it's kind of it causes you to meditate on that type of thought form or thought pattern or something. How would you describe
well, and it's a so like the adventurer
it? Hmm.
card that you got in the reading. Um, if it's literally a energy that you can invoke to yourself, where you try to pull that energy into your own self and embody it. And doing so, in my experience, you will just have a more adventurous day that day. If you wake up in the morning and are saying, like, do a little
Yeah,
exercise to invoke the adventure, it will make your life more adventurous for better or worse.
that's
Like,
cool. Yeah, for
you'll
worse.
well, yeah, because it's adventurous to have a flat tire on the way to work.
Yeah,
Like,
I know that's
not
what when
necessarily
you said
fun,
that,
but it is
I
an
was like, man,
adventure.
I got a 2 hour drive. I don't know if I want to invoke that card today. I got stuff to do.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I want to. But it is.
that's cool.
There's all sorts of different, again, archetypes that he used, like the adventurer, the contemplator, the librarian, the witch. There's other like kind of more out there ideas like the sun, the planet, the moon. Um, but they all, um, I don't know. It's when you're getting, um, when you listen to a really good piece of music that's good enough to give you goosebumps,
Yeah,
and you get that like kind of full body rush
yeah,
almost. So what I've found in my, I guess, mysticism is that is like the crudest form of what it feels like to interact with spirits. That like that's like going into an office and like just flipping on a whole wall of light switches,
yeah.
where like everything's activated all at once. And that for me, like I don't really necessarily see or hear things that often,
Hmm.
but I very frequently get different embodied sensations. Um, and I've come to learn in some ways not maybe how to interpret those, but more just like I've noticed consistency in them, and have been able to I don't know, realize what different sensations kind of mean or symbolize, I guess. Um, like there's a real particular feeling when someone is trying to get my attention. It's like a feeling of being stared at from across a room.
Hmm.
Um, I've always gotten that feeling throughout my life, like when there's no one else there. And, I've come to realize that there's no one else physically there, but
Yeah.
to like trust that feeling, someone's staring at you.
Yeah.
Different kind
That's,
of things like that that the mysticism has led me. And then, you
so what?
explore that, like,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what do you do when that happens? You just explore. You explore it. Is that what you?
yeah, because you kind of reach out and say, okay, who is this? Who's looking at me?
Yeah.
And in that way, I've kind of come in contact with different ancestors or guides or,
That's
um, yeah, I have a really strong ancestor in my great grandmother who I'm actually named after. Um, that her name was Rosa Fleetwood.
oh.
Everyone thinks I'm named after either Fleetwood Mac or the Fleetwood Cadillac, but no, it was a great grandmother. And it was about a year ago now, I was ruining some biscuits in my kitchen, trying to make biscuits and just like making a mess out of it. And I just had the experience of having just, it was weird. I had the sensation of having like a rolling pin swung at my head and being told, like, put some flour on your hands and fix those goddamn biscuits. And like, it was still to this day, like the strongest sensation I've had of a non-physical thing
Yeah.
getting in contact with me. But she was just so pissed that I was ruining these biscuits for my family.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Um, but she's fiery and has helped me a lot with not just cooking and different recipes and stuff, but like um just how to honor my family. And
That's cool.
um yeah, it's I think in that regard, like to tie it back into the tarot kind of taught me this non-language language for the first time. And in that way
Yeah.
really was the foot in the door to these other mystical practices that
That's
I
really,
don't
yeah.
I don't know if I would have had the kind of the blueprint to learn how to interpret these experiences without the tarot.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because when you're speaking in like the realm of images, it's almost like leading you further into the realm of imagination. I mean, the images, imagination,
Yeah,
and all that, and then yeah, and then you're able to see the just the symbolic nature and poetic nature of reality in general. And so that's
exactly.
really cool.
Well, and that I think has become one of my core beliefs that reality is narrative shaped.
Mm, yeah,
I
totally
forget where
agree.
I heard that, but it's just, you know,
Yeah,
you can learn a lot by figuring out what story you're telling.
yeah, that's really true. I mean, that's so true because I can't remember where I heard it too recently. There was somewhere and it said that the some I can't remember what ancient culture it was, but they when they talked about rocks, they said the rocks were the storytellers or something like that.
Hmm.
And then you just think
Yeah,
about archaeology and it's like, yeah, how are they not storytellers? Like even the rocks are talking to you if you just
yeah,
yeah, because they just the way the water's worn on them, like the way you can look at them. And I was recently trying to get back into gold panning, and so I was watching a few videos on that. And this guy is just uh probably not mystical at all. Is just talking about all these rocks, and he's like, and you look at this rock, and you can see this and that, and so you know that this has happened here. And I'm like, man, all these rocks are telling him stories right now that I'm
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, there's a narrative structure to life. That's really cool. I like how you said that.
yeah.
Man. Well,
But yeah, I think that's most of like my story up till now. I mean, there's been other like specific experiences, like about a year and a half ago, I had this really weird experience of talking to a star.
No way.
Um,
I want to hear this.
yeah.
If you got time.
Um,
I do want
yeah,
to get
yeah,
in all the
yeah.
questions too and everything else
Yeah.
in the reading, but there's a lot to talk about. But this has been so, I
Yeah.
mean, I just like getting to know you. This is fun.
Yeah, well, and I don't have still a lot of my friends, and it's like especially even I'm on my second marriage, and my current wife is very non-spiritual materialist, but
Okay.
like at the same time very supportive of me and all my weird stuff, like
That's good. That's fun.
jars of sand that I keep. I've got a different oils and like I get to keep altars around the house.
Nice.
Um, but the um hmm,
So you were talking
lost my
to a
train of thought.
star.
Yeah, so this was at the last place I lived at. I had stayed up late one night and I was out on the back porch and there's this the star Sirius, that's
Hmm.
the brightest star in the sky. Um, I was just looking out at it because it was I lived on this like second floor apartment and from the porch you could really get a good view of the stars even though it was in like the middle of the city. And I was just looking at this bright twinkling star and just thought to myself, well, what would uh if a star was talking to me, how would I be able to listen? And something about that thought just put my mind in just the right place where I had that kind of big, expansive mind again. But
Wow.
instead of expanding everywhere all the way out, it was like this laser beam that just focused right into that star. And
That's cool.
it was this really intense experience because and like I've learned since then some of the like the ancient Egyptians believed that you could get essentially sunburn from the star Sirius. It was so bright that
No,
if Sirius was out in the sky at night, you had to be careful because you could get star burned.
that's
Um,
that's interesting. It's
yeah,
like kind of like the
and
idea, reminds me a little bit, what is that term? Yeah, lunatic comes from like lunatic or like staring at the
yep.
moon too long or something. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and it was like I just got this sensation of heat and fire and energy that was like a million supernovas, but like not that it was flowing through me, just that like that's what I was somehow before. And even all that energy and power and everything still saw me specifically.
Wow. That's
And
cool.
yeah,
That
it
reminds
was a
me,
really
when you said that, it reminds me of this phrase. It's been on my mind, not prominent on my mind, but comes to my mind every once in a while. Recently, there's this line that Jesus says when he's praying to God, and he says, "Restore to me the glory I had with you before the world began," or something like that. And I often think
hmm.
about that. I'm like, what is that glory? But when you said like the way it kind of focused on you and the heat and the fire kind of illuminated you to something like, what did you say that it was kind of like something you used to be before or something like that?
Yeah, it like it burned away everything that is temporary and
Hmm.
it left me in this state where I was experiencing myself as only the eternal parts of me,
Wow.
which like it's weird. Like it was like I gained wisdom without knowledge. Like I feel like I remember in that moment being able to look back and like see vivid details about past lives and look forward and see like where I was heading and like all these answers to all these questions that I've had.
That's so
But
cool.
then like when the moment ended, it was like too much for my brain to actually hold on to.
Yeah,
And so like I just I couldn't come back with any of that information, but I retained the memory of having the information.
that's so
It was
cool.
weird.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Um
almost like time and space just flood away or something. Or, I don't know.
Yeah, or
It is.
it was an experience of being outside of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. That's so
Um,
cool. Be careful talking to
but
stars, I guess.
yeah, well, and it's still like just thinking of, I don't know. I hope someone else out there hears this and tries it. Just sits out at the stars and just thinks, okay, if one of these was talking to me, how would I be able to listen? And I don't know, just something about that thought.
Mm,
It just
yeah,
quieted everything down enough so that I could hear.
yeah, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, there's a verse in I actually just read it like I think it was yesterday. I was reading the Psalms and it's Psalm 19 and it says the heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament shows his handiwork. And it says day unto day utters speech and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth and their words to the end of the world. It just makes me think of that like even the stars are
Yeah.
talking. They're uttering
Yeah.
speech and talking, yeah. Yeah, it's
Well, it's the
cool.
same
That's
way with trees. Like
yeah.
if you ever want an experience that, at least like I feel like this is a spiritual experience, trying to talk to one tree, very, very difficult. They don't have a lot to say. You put your hands on two trees and just be the conduit between them, and you'll pick up on so much.
Well, I haven't tried that. Oh man, I'm gonna do
Yeah,
this.
it's a really fun kind of, I mean, at least for me, and I
Yeah.
learned it from someone else. So it's at least two people out there that can have this
Do they ever
experience, but
argue
all
the
kinds
trees?
of interaction.
Really?
Yeah, like if you find the right two that don't like each other, but it's it we're so used to thinking of ourselves as individuals, and just plant life is not like that. It's so
Yeah,
much of it is like so much more symbiotic than we are.
yeah,
But when you can interact with more than just one piece of it, it's amazing how intelligent it can be.
yeah, yeah. That's that's cool. I'm definitely gonna have to try that. I've never tried that before, but
It's just all these, well, because it's you're joining yourself to a network of information transfer.
yeah,
And whether or not you're the conduit, there's information being transferred between the trees, like how wet the soil is, if they're being attacked by bacteria or fungus or something. Like they trees talk to each other. Like,
yeah. There is. I mean, there's that whole like what scientists have discovered that too, though the whole network of underground mushrooms or fungi or something where they actually do link up and talk to one another.
hmm and
Yeah,
it's, even though you're not like, it's not Avatar, you're not like jacking into the sequence of the trees and whatnot, but like it sort of is.
yeah,
And if you can, open yourself to the right kind of feelings of it, it's, I don't know. I don't think you'll feel nothing. Let me put it that way.
yeah. That's
I
cool.
couldn't say any more than that, but
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I guess I should ask some of these. Wait, we've been through some of them, I guess, then. Transformative
yeah.
experiences, and what led you to the tarot. Let's see. So I guess I could ask this question, like, do you have a favorite tarot deck or and then within that, do you have a
Yeah.
favorite card that you like working with? Or...
Yeah, I did kind of want to show off. This is the sack that I keep all my divination cards in.
That's a lot of
Um,
cards. I
yeah.
like how you
Well,
said
it's so
earlier
it's
you were at a time in your life where there was when you didn't have internet, so I was like, oh, I'll practice divination. What else you
yeah.
gonna do?
Um, but this basically sits on the back of like my main altar.
Yeah.
Because it is something like the same way that you make offerings to spirits. I find that tarot cards want to be kept charged and kept happy. So, like inside of the
Oh,
pouch, I have like this prayer cloth that's covered in peacocks,
nice. Prayer
and
cloth. Sweet.
yeah,
Yeah, I know about those in
and then
church.
in
I've had
here
those.
there's
Oh,
five
nice.
or four tarot decks and two oracle decks, and they're all just stacked up with each other.
That's cool.
Um, my favorite one was the bottom row from your reading.
Yeah, that one was really interesting. There was a lot going on in
Um,
those.
it's called the Cosmic Tarot.
Okay.
See if you can see the back image of it.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That's
It's got
cool.
like a um but yeah, there's I love this deck because it um the yeah, actually this card's perfect. The High Priestess from the Rider Waite Tarot deck
Okay.
has a lot of symbolism in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um the B and the J pillars, and then you see the what's it called? The curtain in the background behind the lady,
Yeah.
um, has pomegranates on it.
I was wondering
And
if
it's
that's what
like,
those were.
yeah, and it's all supposed to very specifically be like she's holding the Torah in her hands.
Yeah, yeah.
And the pomegranates like that behind those pillars is supposed to be like the land of the dead. Um, and there's all those clues to what this card means that, if you don't know like what is the Torah, uh what do pomegranates represent, you wouldn't really get any of that from just the image.
Yeah.
Whereas let me see if I can
So
find
can I
the
pause for a
high.
second? I mean,
Yeah.
well, I mean, keep looking, but I have a question in that. What, for personal interest mostly, what do pomegranates represent, in your opinion? Does it have to do with the dead, land of the dead, a lot of it? And can you say
I
more
mean,
about that?
that's what the traditional representation is from
Okay.
like Greek, and because like the myth of Persephone, that
Yeah.
was the fruit that she ate in the underworld that
Mhm.
trapped her down there with Hades.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't personally have any like personal representation of pomegranate, but it's like learning the that original tarot deck. A lot of what that entails is learning what all the symbolism and all the cards means.
Yeah.
Um,
Gotcha. Gotcha. The reason
that
I'm curious because I've been curious about that for a while because I mean I feel like with symbols you can never really pin them down hard line and be like this pomegranates have are only associated with death. But it seems like that I've been intrigued by that because it seems like there is some sort of association with that, or at least if nothing else, like sleep, like a death like sleep or something like that.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, and I forget exactly what it is, but I believe it has a lot to do with how they're grown and the fact that it's one of the only fruits that grows in winter.
uh,
Um, so it's at least in the Mediterranean part of the
what?
world.
That's wild. Okay, I didn't even know that. That makes even more sense now too.
I
Okay.
believe, like, don't quote me on it, but I think I remember that being part of a reason why.
Yeah.
Why can I find this thing called?
Well, I've been interested in that for a while now because like in the scriptures, the book of the Song of Solomon is like isn't the woman in that is called the Shulamite woman, and so there's a play on her name with Shalom, which means like peace and rest and things
Yeah.
like that. And often I think of
Uh-huh.
like kind of I mean every night when you go to sleep and you kind of practice death and you sleep at night and so you're in kind of this state of rest or Shalom or this peaceful sleep. And so it seems like the king in the story is kind of like this kingly figure, and he's going in this back and forth with the spirit of Shalom, I guess, or the Shulamite, but then there's reference to pomegranates throughout that book quite a bit too, as well. And so that makes me
Huh.
think like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's kind of this play between the king and, I don't even know the right way to describe it. I don't want to say like the spirit of death because there's so many bad, like, people hear death and they think all these terrible ideas, but it's like a peaceful
Well,
sleep or something like that, I
if
guess.
it's silly, I can't find the one card I'm looking for in this deck.
Is it your favorite one?
But well, no, I was just going to show kind of why this deck was my favorite by
Okay.
pointing out the difference between the card that I just showed in that deck and the
in
version
the
of
High
it in this
Priestess one.
deck.
Well,
Yeah,
maybe
but
I
I
could
just can't.
Google it. And you said it's the Cosmic Tarot?
Yeah.
Cosmic Tarot High Priestess. Let's see. I could maybe just find the image and pull it up on screen. I'm guessing it is. I mean, I guess it's this one. Wait. Um, look, I'm getting like two different ones. This one, I mean, I got a few of these. This is on Pinterest, but I don't know if this is. Is it like a close up of her face?
Yes.
Okay, that's gotta be it then. Let me see if I can share the screen. How do I do this again? I haven't done this in so long. Oh man, where is it? Share screen. There it is. It's the one that's highlighted already. Let's see. There we go. Sweet. So is that is that it? The right one? Can
Yep.
you see that?
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
that's just such a cooler representation of like a mysterious female figure. Um,
Yeah. You kind of got like stars even flowing down through her hair or something. Like
yeah.
in the right side there. It's weird, huh? And the waves
But
on her
it,
face.
yeah, but it kind of takes what was a like esoteric image and makes it into something that is much more, I don't know, accessible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the death card is actually my favorite card in the tarot.
Is that?
Um, and that from this deck, if you want to go back to the screen here.
Oh yeah. Let me just stop share. There we go. Sweet. If you got it there, cool. Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Um, so you can see all the stuff down at his feet. It's like
Broken
religious
sword,
symbolism,
skull.
broken swords, skulls, and it's like an event horizon behind him, like this big obelisk or something that's just standing there.
Wow.
But even there's like a clock. Um, it's just everything meets death eventually.
Yeah,
Yeah, a king's crown, a grave, like city structures, soldiers, helmet, um, everything.
that's cool.
Um, but yeah, I love the Cosmic Tarot because of its symbolism is so um you don't need any prior experience, I feel like. It just like something about the art in that deck cuts right through to the archetypes and like
Gotcha.
subconscious that I feel like I don't know. That was the first tarot deck that I bought besides the original one, um, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and it was a lot easier to work with for me at first.
That's cool.
Um, like I've kind of gone back and learned the Rider-Waite-Smith one more in depth since then. Um, this one is another example of a very different kind of tarot deck, but I'll show you this one first. This is the Antique Anatomy Tarot. Um, so everything on it has, instead of cups, the suit is elixirs,
Oh, wow.
and it just has like these flowers and old style images on
That's cool.
like here's the hanged man that was in your reading
Yeah,
is literally just a hanging skeleton
with these different
surrounded
flowers.
by flowers and stuff in this
Yeah.
one. And it's all done up like old uh anatomy textbooks with the way like some of the bones are laid out and things like that. But instead of having images on a lot of the cards, it just has like the number of things. Like this is the eight of coins. So it
Oh,
just has eight coins on it, and you don't get like a person standing there with a bird that they're about to let go, like you do in the traditional tarot. And that's where, like, I think these kinds of decks that just have they're called pip decks, um, that don't really have clues. Like like on the other decks, you could look at the image and get some kind of clue of what it is. This, the, what is it, the Seven of Swords, unless
Yeah.
you really know your flowers and knives, there's no way to get anything from that.
Yeah.
Because that's all it is. It's just flowers and knives. But
Yeah.
like me, I know the Seven of Swords as the card, both from the other images and what it means in general. And that kind of allows me to use a deck like that.
Gotcha.
Some people that are, I feel like, even more intuitive, or maybe not more intuitive than I am, but just have a different kind of intuition with this stuff, prefer those kinds of decks because they say the images trap them too much into one specific interpretation of the card.
Okay. Huh.
So they would rather use stuff that doesn't have intricate images on it so that they can just rely on their intuition.
That kind of so that comment kind of leads me into a question I had too, the where I wrote it down. I don't know if I wrote it very clearly, but do you find with using the tarot and having specific images that maybe that kind of where I don't know the right way to ask this. Does it
If it
does it
locks
help?
you into,
Yeah, well, is that somewhat beneficial if it kind of traps you in that you don't necessarily it allows you to not let your own opinion or emotions or feelings bleed over into the interpretation as much, do you think? Or
I, I would say no, but that
okay,
is purely my experience with it.
gotcha.
Like, as an example, I did a reading for someone a while back that had the King of Swords come up.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when I saw that card where it was in the reading, apropos of nothing else, I was immediately like, oh, that's this person's father.
Well,
Right away, like, just
yeah.
knew that that was this person's father. And it totally was.
Wow.
Um, but it's for me, it doesn't get in the way. It's more like it's like when you grow a rock crystal. Have you ever done that? Or like a
No,
sugar
that
crystal?
sounds fun. I
There's
have.
yeah, it's that's how you make, have you ever had rock candy?
Yeah, I
It's like
have.
the stick. So you do that by melting a bunch of sugar in water, and then you just put the stick in the sugar water, and sugar crystals form around the stick.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
I kind of think of it that same way, that like the card gives me an image for my intuition to crystallize around.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like if
Gotcha.
I don't have anything there, it's harder for me than if I have the cards. Um,
Yeah.
but
Well,
this
this
is
is
uh
go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh no, well, I mean, just this stuff is fascinating to me because I grew up like in the church circles. I grew up in very charismatic circles, and so there was a lot of um well, I shouldn't say a whole lot of prophetic stuff, but I've been to other churches where it's very, very focused on prophetic um I don't know what you call that, prophetic basically readings or things like that, I guess you would say. But
Yeah, like
they don't have images to go off of. They're not like flipping cards. They're pulling from images in the mind, I guess, and in the imagination.
hmm
But then I've been in somewhere it just it feels very unstable a lot of times. And then you wonder like even when people will sometimes say what they see, um, then they'll give an interpretation and it almost sounds like it's of their own flavor or something like that. And it's like I don't know if sometimes I don't know, it almost feels less grounded to me than the tarot does because the tarot it's like you flip the image and it's like you then you work with the image and you're letting something speak to you through your imagination, but you also have this image that you're kind of going off of that's a little bit more
hmm
guided or something like that.
yeah. And it's intuition is really, really weird from my experience. Like
Yeah.
you can be 100% accurate with your intuition, and the way your mind interprets it can still be so wrong.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that's taught me that was trying to learn remote viewing, which is still something I'm kind of sort of working on. There's a Discord for remote viewing where they give you a weekly target, and you try to either draw it or describe it into a recording, or some people model it out of clay. But
Cool.
like the one that really stood out to me was, it was a bundle of pipes, like metal pipes, like in a spherical or circular bundle,
Yeah.
like you would see on a construction site. And that was
Yeah.
the object. Because they literally try to pick random stuff that you're not going to just guess this, but
Yeah.
they'll give you a little clue, like the object is man-made or the object is natural, but
Yeah.
that really doesn't narrow it down much. And for that week, the number of people that drew like a highway full of cars, and or like something with a lot of legs, or something that, like, when you kind of pull back from the image, you'll see a lot of circles making a larger circle. But the way they interpreted that was like cars on a highway and like all the wheels stacked up together, or
Oh,
like
gotcha.
a caterpillar with all of its legs like curled up going around itself.
That's
Um,
crazy. Wow.
yeah, it's just fascinating how like so many people got, this is a circle of circles, and how many people
Yeah.
interpreted that differently.
Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. Because I remember one time there was a it was at one of these prophetic circles, and they were prophesying over me, and they said something about um I can't remember. Oh, they were like casting a spirit of anxiety off of me, and I remember standing there thinking like, I don't feel anxious at all right now, like thinking that in my head. But then afterwards, a lady came up to me, a friend of my family's, and she said, and then she gave me more clarity, and it actually made more sense because she said, I feel like what they were maybe sensing is you feel kind of restless right now, not necessarily anxious, but there's like this
Mm,
restlessness that's going on. And I was like, yeah, that
yeah.
makes total sense. I was like, but so it's kind of, I think, like you said, people can pick up on certain things, and then, yeah, they won't be far off, but it'll just be like, yeah, just slightly tweaked. It looks, and then from
Yeah.
one person to the other, I'm like thinking in my head, this isn't hitting home at all. But that was another thing. That also was another thing I really appreciated, and I thought was really interesting in, um, you had put it on one of these on the, I think it was at the last page. Um, um, oh, it was on my reading, but yeah, it was because let's see. This is not, please take this not as divine guidance, but as you would advice from a trusted friend, something to be weighed against your judgment. And I thought that was kind of, that's one of the good things that I feel like I've heard about in prophetic circles too, is kind of like um, if it doesn't resonate for you, then it's like you just let it be sort of, and let it
Yeah.
sit and see if it comes to pass. Because sometimes things won't at first, and then sometimes it may just be off. You're just like, you get later and you're like, man, that
Yeah.
didn't make any sense at all. Yeah.
Well, and that
But
was like, to talk about all these cool experiences I've had. In some of them, like I feel like I've come up short of what was expected of me by the thing that I was interacting with.
mm,
I mean, and that's kind of, I don't know, sometimes spirit will ask things of you that you don't feel like you're ready for yet. And that doesn't mean that you have to push yourself to that. Like, because even if you want to talk about your reading a little bit more, like just so much of it was telling you to like blindly rush forward. Um, and to the point where, like, especially something like that, you want that disclaimer on the end, because like the last thing I would want you to do is say, "Oh yeah, blindly rush forward. I'm going to put my savings in crypto," or like,
yeah, yeah,
just go out and do something totally non-rational, because you got some good advice from the tarot. It's important to
mm,
remember, like, you asked a question about music, so
yeah,
make sure you're applying that to music. It might not necessarily be the case that you should blindly rush into stuff in other areas of your life.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's true. Yeah,
but
that's good.
um, but that's why, like, I think tarot, at least in my experience, it's it's good when you can have a conversation with it. and a conversation is two-way, and a conversation is um not like
Yeah.
there's no one that you would have a conversation with that you would 100% take anything that they said as fact.
Yeah.
Like even if it's someone that you absolutely trust, it's like if they said the sky was green, you would know they were being sarcastic or something. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think tarot is the same way. Like sometimes it's going to have a sense of humor, sometimes it's going to mess with you a little bit.
Yeah.
um Sometimes it um will give you bad advice or advice that you can't follow for one reason or another. Um, and I don't think that, like, when I was starting out, I always assumed that that meant I misinterpreted the cards. Um, but it's as I've like one of the reasons why now I keep my cards like sealed up on an altar is because I want the conversation to be coming from a very specific place.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you don't put in effort to make sure you know where the conversation is coming from, whether
Yeah.
it's like your highest self or divine light, or like it could literally be anything down to a specific spirit that you think has information for you. But like it's again, the tarot is a language that I think a lot of different things can use to speak
Yeah.
when they don't, especially things that don't otherwise have a mouth in the real world, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really
Um,
cool. Totally.
but it's always like, and that's why I got the sense with your reading that it was very much like, I don't know, something close to you was coming through to me in that reading. And it always reminds me when I get that feeling for other people that, like, I don't know, my guides are out there working just as hard as yours are. That
Yeah.
even though I experience them in a totally different way, it's um it's always just a pleasant reminder that things are going the way they should, at least in some regards.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, we can get into that too if you want. I mean, I don't know. We've already been going for a while, but I mean, I'm good to talk if you still are. I don't want to keep you
Yeah,
forever,
yeah.
but okay, okay, cool. Because yeah,
No,
we can get
I've
into that. I have a question too. Do you feel like when you said when you were doing this reading that you kind of felt it? I don't know the right way you said it. A weird sense of like connectedness,
oh
or like
yeah.
it was more on. Yeah. Do you
Hmm.
feel like with people that are closed off or skeptical that you can kind of sense that? Or does that kind of block? Is there a blockage there a lot of times, or no? Or
100%.
okay,
And it's not even so much like it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they believe in the tarot.
yeah,
It has 1,000% to do with where they're lying to themselves.
gotcha.
And if that's tied up in their skepticism, like kind of like it was for me when I was in my early 20s, I would have been really hard to read tarot for back then.
I gotcha.
Um, but one of the hardest things to read, and I think one of the biggest challenges of reading for the public at large, or like putting yourself out there, is because eventually you're going to come across and do a reading for someone that is something that they don't want to hear, like that they wanted affirmation on something and you have to give them a
Ah,
no.
yeah.
um
Oh,
some
that's rough.
people will take that very much as like oh well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, like
Mm,
I'm mad at you now.
yeah. Well, I mean, I actually really appreciate that though, that you could say something hard to someone, and I feel like that's kind of maybe something about the cards too that gives you that guess I was trying to get earlier when I said like I feel like it can at least in a way keep you from maybe letting your own emotions come out or picking up off their emotions where like the tarot is kind of a little bit more guided or more grounded in that way
Hmm.
because you flip the card and it's like it is something they don't want to hear but it's like but it's what's there and so you just
Yeah,
kind of yeah and so you have to yeah kind of shoot the person straight and it's not as flattering or something it's not always as flattering or just yeah
yeah.
something
Well, and I've also found too, and this is why like I said I was starting doing public readings again, um, because it like there was a phase there for a while where I was like, okay, I'll just read for people, and if I get that vibe, I'll just tell the person what they want to hear and move on. The cards did not like that.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, they're very
Yeah.
much like if you want our wisdom, you have to share it as is, period.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
it's that again, I don't know if that's a mandate for everybody, but that was very much a mandate for me. That was
Yeah.
just like you don't get off telling people what they want to hear. If you want us to be honest, you have to be honest too.
Yeah.
Was kind of the
Yeah. Well,
situation
that's
of it.
good. And yeah, I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, well, and
Um,
that's yeah.
but yeah, I was kind of wondering, yeah, that's what made me think about the skepticism thing too. Because like I think like you said, it's not necessarily that they don't believe either. Because I can think of people I know, Christians per se, that would uh that would fully believe in the tarot because they really believe in that stuff, but just be so closed off to it. Like I would imagine
Yeah.
it'd be really hard to work with them in a reading. But the weird thing too is like I think a lot of, especially the deck, the popular deck that you mentioned, I can't remember the name of it, but that's
Yeah.
actually there's a lot of Christian symbolism that's in that. Like even the card you
Oh,
showed me
yes.
with the high priestess, like the two pillars, it had a B and a J, and I'm like, that's Boaz and Yakin, if I remember
Yes,
it. Yeah,
yes,
from the
yep, yep.
Bible.
You got it
Yeah,
better than I did. I always forget what that stands for, but yeah,
yeah.
100%. That's
It's like in
and
the building of the Temple of Solomon or something. Those are the two pillars he names or something like. Yeah.
mhm.
So.
And like when you look at the devil card, there's all sorts of Adam and Eve symbolism on it.
Oh wow.
Um, um,
Nice.
yeah,
That's cool.
um, yeah. Let me see if I can find that one.
Yeah. I'll get out this
Um,
reading too. But yeah,
yeah,
while you're looking for that, I was gonna read this too because this was the example one you sent me before, and I won't share a lot of it. I just wanted to read the first part that I highlighted because it says, because this was helpful for me. I kept having to reference it back because I don't know how this stuff is read or even looked at. But it says
yeah.
it says the spreads are all read from bottom to top, with the cards on the bottom being the attitude or viewpoint the question is being asked from, and the middle cards being a past to future progression from left to right, and the top card advice on how to move forward. So I thought that was very helpful, and I kept having to reference that to kind of like, I don't know, help me understand what was kind of going on and how to look at it. But then here's this other. Despite the inspiration, tarot, in my view, is best seen as advice from a friend with your best interests in mind. So yeah, I like that a lot. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it says
Um,
as a disclaimer, take this reading with a grain of salt. Feel free to take what feels right and leave the rest. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's really good. But sorry.
no, you're good. So, yeah, this is the Lover's card.
Oh, nice.
Um, and so it's got what's supposed to be Archangel Michael with his flaming wings. And
Wow.
you see behind Eve, there's a tree full of apples with a snake in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
And then behind Adam, it's the burning bush.
Oh, gotcha. I was wondering what that
Um,
was. Nice.
yeah. And then on the devil card, you'll notice a very similar layout
Yeah.
with the angel in the background, the angel in the background. And then Adam and Eve this time with chains around their neck that go to his feet. And she's got again
Oh.
fruit that she's holding, grapes, and he's got fire.
What is he
Um,
on? Is that like, I mean, is that a
it's like
block of
a
something? Or?
yeah, it's like a block that they're chained to.
Yeah. Wow.
See, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And he's got
but
chicken feet. Is that right?
yep,
Oh my
chicken
goodness. I'm
feet
gonna have
and
to.
bat wings and devil goat horns and all
There's
that
a,
stuff.
there's the I have one of my friends was he told me the story about Solomon and the demon Ashmedai or Asmodeus, and they were saying something
Hmm.
about how um like the demon always has to wear socks because he has chicken feet, so no one can see he's got to hide his feet
Yep.
so no one can tell. I was like,
Yeah.
it's funny he's got
Yeah.
chicken feet in there. But anyway, we can get into this if you want. I mean, I still have some questions too, but we can go through this reading. So the
Yeah. Let's go through the reading and then see
wait,
if any other questions haven't been answered yet.
cool, awesome. So this one was I had asked about my band, what and we use the question, what can I do to make my music as successful as possible? And so then, maybe I can share screen on here again. If I can, let me see if I can pull it up.
Yeah, that'd be
And then
cool.
because I printed it off, but I don't have, my printer doesn't have any color. There's the image. Let me just see if I can do this. Um, Man, I wish I could blow it up in a bigger screen. I don't know. I'll just share this. Let's see. Maybe that'll be enough. Does that work for you?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. All right.
works for me.
Don't know how to zoom in on it, but we'll see. Save image as. Let me see if I can. Oh, here, let me. I'm just gonna try to save it because maybe if I save it, I can pull it up, and then it'll give me the opportunity
Yeah,
to
full
zoom in
screen.
more. Yeah, desktop. Let's see. Should have done this before. Unprepared.
All
Let me just
good.
try this. Stop share. Let's go to this real quick. See. There we go. Now I got the image, so that should be easier. Share screen. It's not. Yeah, that's it, I think. There we go. Cool.
Yeah.
So I think that should be it. Yeah, there we go. I
Hmm.
can zoom in and out. Okay, cool. That's a little bigger.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to go through this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was a little confused at the layout at first. I think because there were so many cards, but you
Well,
said
and
the
it's a different layout than like this one is not red bottom to top like the other ones were. Um,
okay,
this one is kind of red from the center out.
okay, the center out.
Um,
Yeah,
because it's basically the the middle column is the most important. Um, and the columns to the right and left each comment on the card in the middle of their row.
gotcha. Yeah,
Um, and so that's where the two of cups in the middle, it was actually is kind of a fun. This is a good example of how sometimes the interpretation will actually involve the physical cards and how they're laid out. Um, that this one just popped right out to me that like the two cards on either side represent the two people in the middle card and
Oh,
what's being brought together, um,
oh, that's
so that you
cool.
can heal. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so what you have is the, and this is like the hardest part about your reading was it in some ways did not feel like I was reading about your music. It felt more like I was reading about you personally. Um, but maybe there's some overlap there where, your personal feelings and emotions are have a lot to do with your music, I
yeah,
assume.
they definitely do. Yeah, we write a lot from experience, and same with
Yeah.
uh Abram, who's like the other songwriter in the band. My sister Natalie's in the band too. She writes a lot from experience as well, but she's moved away at the time. But my friend Abram's the same way. His songs have uh would probably, I mean, in where he's been, it would probably resonate with this as well, I would think. Because he's been
Yeah.
through a lot, but
But yeah, so I mean obviously the Ten of Swords over there is not a happy card. Um dude's been pretty well obliterated, but it is like, destruction comes before creation in many
yeah.
regards, and that's really what that card represents. It's like as bad as things can get before they start getting better. And that's why the sky's not all black. It's supposed to be the dawn coming up over the horizon.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said in the reading, that like because in this deck, colors are very important. Um, like even the way that on the Hanged Man card, his like I forget exactly what it represents, but the red pants with the blue shirt is supposed to name him as from a certain sect or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
but it's very much not a coincidence that the yellow halo he has and the yellow light of the dawn on the other card are the same color.
Yeah, I remember you
Um,
mentioning that.
because yeah, because that is that's how they're coming together. Um, there's also, since you like Hebrew characters, his legs are making yod.
What? I had no
Yeah,
idea. That's
yeah.
interesting.
So that's
Whoa.
another aspect of the Hanged Man that's interesting. And then also, like I mentioned in the text, um, the story of Odin hanging from the world tree for 9 days and nights to learn the runes.
To learn the runes.
Um,
Yeah, I hadn't
yep.
heard that story. That was really cool. And
Yeah, well, I would
the idea of the
look
hangman
into that more. Yeah.
is trying to see things from a basically from a new or reverse perspective, right? Is that
And
kind of the idea?
and I would say, just with the caveat that it also involves self-sacrifice. Like, it's not a comfortable position to hang yourself like that,
Yeah,
but it's a necessary position to put yourself in.
gotcha. Yeah.
And that's where, like, the guy on the ground there with the swords in his back, he doesn't have to do anything. He's very comfortable being dead.
Yeah.
Whereas the hanged man is in a much less comfortable position in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So could
And
you maybe break this down a bit? I mean, or I can read which would be easier. Should I read what you had written, or do you want to just kind of go through it a little bit
yeah, I'll just kind of go
more?
through it because I
Okay.
might say something a little bit different that helps clarify it.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I write better than I talk,
Okay.
just because I
I
I
think you're
have
doing
more
great.
time to like proofread.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been told that I do spoken readings just fine. Um, but yeah, so you're asking about your music, and so this shows where you are now. Um, there's two energies at play here that are coming together in a manner that is healing. Um,
So we're
you've
looking at
got
the middle card basically, right, with the two energies.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And then the two energies, the if you want to know what the two energies are, that's the outer two cards.
Gotcha.
Um, and I say the healing too because that caduceus in the between the two cups, that's like a universal symbol of healing. The Mercury staff that you see
Hmm.
on a lot of doctors' offices and hospitals and stuff. Um, but the
And the
it's like
middle
it's
card
showing you
is,
where
sorry, the middle card is the two of cups. Is that right?
yes, two
Okay,
of
gotcha.
cups,
Okay.
100%. Um, and this is also, like, I can explain something here. The Hanged Man, he's
Mhm.
part of the major arcana, and
Okay.
the other that's why he has a number up at the top because the major arcana go in order. They have a sequence from 0 to 21,
Okay.
and whereas the pip cards or the minor arcana have a suit, um, and are numbered 1 through 10, and then have um, a court cards to go with them.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
so, but that's why that one card has like the label at the bottom that says the Hanged Man, and the other two just have the
The
little Roman numeral at the top.
gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
so you can kind of tell them apart like that.
Yeah.
Um, but the um,
So in this images, so I'll describe the images a little bit for people that aren't watching or whatever. So the middle one is the two of cups. It's got two figures, a man and a woman coming together with and above them in the sky is the like the basically the staff of Hermes, right?
mhm,
So that like you said is the image, a symbol for on a lot of hospitals and healings and things like that. And so then
yep,
to the two sides of that card, which like give a further interpretation to that, I guess you would say, is the Ten of Swords, which is the man you described laying down with a bunch of swords at him, and the yellow, uh, it's like a black sky with a yellow sunrise or something coming up in the back. Then on the other side is the Hanged Man, who's a figure who's hanged upside down, which, like you said, there's a lot of symbolism even in the shape of his legs, and he's got like it looks like an illuminated halo or something around his head. Um,
yep.
so
He's
yeah.
gaining the knowledge that he didn't previously have. Um, so I think that describes the middle row well enough.
Yeah. Well,
If
the question I guess I had that would probably bleed
uh-huh.
into another into I mean just the images in general. So when you're working with the cards, I would assume it seems like there's a lot of, this number of swords or this number of cups, like or wands or something, things like that. So when you see the swords, does the swords normally mean generally the same thing, or does it? How do
Yeah,
you
no, that's a
take that
perfect
as a
time to go into
symbol?
that. There are lots of different interpretations, and I think each tarot reader will either have a favorite or a couple that they tend towards. Like you can, so there's four suits. There's wands, cups, swords, and pentacles or coins, as it's called in some decks. Um, the four elements would be a sign that wands are fire, cups are water, swords are air, and pentacles are earth. You can
Okay.
also line them up with the seasons so that like wands are summer, um, swords are spring, cups are fall, and pentacles are winter. Um, and they have a
Mm,
different order if you do it that way, but I find that helpful if you're asking a time related question.
yeah,
Um,
that is really helpful. I mean, I already got lost which ones were which, but I've got to listen
yeah.
back and that will be helpful. But you said wands were fire?
hmm
That's interesting.
And well,
Okay.
so my favorite interpretation is the creative process because I think it's where wands make the most sense. The first you have the wand of inspiration where you
Mm,
get the idea. Then you have the cup that overflows where you have once you have that first inspiration, you have all the ideas that spring forth from it.
yeah.
Then you have the sword that cuts away all the extra ideas that
Mm,
won't
okay.
work in reality,
Yeah.
that are maybe too fantastical or too harsh on themselves, cuts it down what's supposed to actually work. And then you have finally the physical manifestation of um, pentacles, like the idea is made manifest. Um, so that is my favorite interpretation because
Yeah.
that
That is really
is
good. I like that.
easier to kind of take what like because the wands can also be passions, the
Mm,
cups are emotions, the swords are intellect or thoughts, and then the pentacles is like physical reality.
that makes a lot of sense too, even when you're just talking about the fire, like earth, air, fire, and water and stuff
hmm
too. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that holds the one that you'd be looking for the most because swords are intellect,
Gotcha.
or thoughts, and like especially the top row being all swords, it's giving you mental advice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So we can. So if we go down to the next one, I think the next page you said was the bottom one. So the
yep,
central one was the, just to reiterate, that was like the present, I guess, the current
yep,
moment,
where you're
where you
coming
are
from
now.
now.
And then the bottom row is that it says what to avoid. Is that so that's not necessarily the past because you said this one is of the different layout or
Right.
something. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily the past, but like if you're, I find that helpful for these questions of how can I do something to the best of my ability,
Yeah.
that you don't just give what to do, you also give what not to do. And so this is the not to do section.
Yeah.
And
Which is
all of
interesting to
it,
me because these are I thought these were really interesting cards. But this is the deck, the cosmic one, right?
yep.
From the
hmm
cosmic one. Yeah, yeah. I like the images on these too. Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't mean to
they're
interrupt.
no, you're good. Um, because it's funny that like all these are traditionally very positive cards. Like the Queen of Swords is like a very strong court card, like arguably one of the strongest court cards. The Three of Wands is a card that in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is associated with like Alexander the Great.
Oh wow.
Um, is where some of the symbolism of that card comes from. And then the Six of Cups is this really nice card of nostalgia and like fond memories from childhood. and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but what all three of these have in common is that they're very uh they're very stationary cards. They like nostalgia is not something like you're not doing something while you're being nostalgic, you're just being nostalgic.
Yeah.
Um, the Three of Wands is sitting and observing things in their perfection, but it's still just sitting and observing. And the Queen of Swords is someone who has a lot of experience doing things and really knows what the hell they're doing. So if that's what you're supposed to avoid,
Yeah.
then like this is telling you to come at your music like you've never done it before. Like, don't be thinking about your past successes and your nostalgia. Don't be sitting back and just observing where your skill level is at now.
Hmm.
Don't consider yourself an expert.
Yeah.
It's saying to like basically that's what if at any point you're like, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing here, I know exactly where this is headed, you probably don't.
Yeah.
It's kind of what these are saying,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
just make yourself as open as possible to just new stuff coming in, to rolling with the punches and going with the flow, because
Mhm.
these are all very kind of set in stone static cards and it doesn't want you to be those.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I like that advice too. That's really good. I have a question too though, like, because the Three of Wands is a card you had observing things in nature in balance. Is there a way? I guess my question is just, how do you know that? Like, is there a way to pick up on that interpretation from just looking at the card, or is that something you're kind of taught over like study,
um
or because how do you get
i
that
would
from the symbols
say
exactly?
I would say that comes from observing, and in my case, that is, oh yeah, perfect. Here it is, right here. So this is the Three of Wands. Oh yeah, yeah. I don't
Let
know
me
if
I
you
got
can
it
go
here.
back
Yeah.
to, yeah. This is the Three of Wands in the traditional tarot deck.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
a guy standing on a shore, and you can see like little boats um dotting
Mm-hmm.
the ocean. He's looking over there. Um, And yeah, this card is representative. It's one of a couple cards that it tells part of the story of Alexander the Great. I think that's when he's at Gibraltar and like looking out from Europe to Africa.
Okay.
Because you
So
can
he's
kind of see
just
the shore in the
observing
background.
observing the
Yeah.
landscape. Yeah.
Watching the ships pass and like thinking of his next moves.
Gotcha.
Whereas if you go back to the image on the card that's in the reading,
Yeah.
it's a lady like doing yoga with while these lotus flowers grow at her feet. Um,
Yeah.
and pointing right up to the sun, like everything's in harmony, everything is
Mm-hmm.
doing what it's supposed to, even though it's an arid land, she's like fully
Yeah.
satiated and
It's
working
it.
on yoga.
What's the significance of the number three? Do you know exactly? Because there's three lotuses, three wands.
I think that's just the because it's the Three of Wands, and
Okay.
um where the traditional deck uses the story of Alexander to kind of give the vibe it wants.
Yeah.
This deck, tries to rely not on your previous knowledge, but on just what you're seeing. And so the lotuses, I think, are there to show, these are growing in the desert. It's like she's
Mm.
growing these flowers in this arid landscape through her willpower and just knowledge of the place.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool.
But
That
again, it's
answers the
someone
question.
with expertise.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love these images here. I love the colors and everything too. And that's what I mean. When you ask me what stands out to me, I'm like, man, I can't just get lost in them because I just will sit here and be like, what's this flower and this, the Queen of Swords? Like, what's that flower mean? Like, and the card on the right, uh with the fact that the cups are green and the people are blue. I don't know, there's so much
yeah,
going on in all those, but
yep.
yeah. So I
All right.
guess we can move to the top one. And you said it's all swords. So
Yep. So you here is, and it's also interesting that you got the Queen of Swords at the bottom and the Knight of Swords at the top.
yeah.
Because even though they're right next to each other in sequence, they could not be further from each other in meaning. Um, whereas the Queen is the experienced person, the knight is the one gaining the experience. Like, not that they're like, because there's the page, the knight, the king, and the queen are the
Okay.
four court cards. So the page doesn't have experience. The knight is gaining experience. The queen has the experience, and the king is using his experience.
Okay. Gotcha.
Is kind of one way to look at the court cards.
Yeah.
And this being experience with mental, um, with intellect, with this is telling you to go somewhere in your mind that you've never been before. Um,
Yeah.
and and two, it's like it's funny here because like the where the two cards on the bottom that framed the queen were kind of positive cards it was telling you to avoid. It's interesting to me that like the two cards on the top are sort of negative cards that it's telling you to embrace.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Excited for it.
Um, it seems like, it's not going to be easy necessarily,
Yeah.
but it looks like it will be incredibly worthwhile.
Yeah. And so
Um,
you have the nine of swords and the two of swords on the right. Why do you say that's no? Is it just the fact that they're swords, or is it traditionally these are just known to be cards that are
so yeah, traditionally these are known to be cards of like the nine is like I call that the migraine card.
okay? Yeah.
It's a card of like mental anguish. Like if you
Really? Wow.
imagine, well, because in sequence, the guy in the Ten of Swords, imagine how anxious he must have been before all those swords got in his back.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
this is the card that comes before that. This is him losing sleep over probably getting stabbed tomorrow.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and the Two of Swords is very much like a someone at a crossroads, um, that is just needs to get up and go.
yeah, yeah. And
Which, but and again, like if and this is where the interpretation comes in, because this is framing the knight.
mm-hmm,
If the knight in this card were opposite, it would say something very different. But because this is a framing of the knight, it's telling you that like you gotta just keep going, even if like because the lady in the image is blindfolded, like she literally can't see.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's actually a common thing on which I should say this is the one deck that I didn't really talk about any. This is called the Visionary Path Tarot. Um, and the images on it were all inspired by ayahuasca journeys by this person that lives down in Peru.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
That's why they're
interesting.
all like these. I don't know if you can go
Reckon.
back to my
Yeah,
screen.
yeah,
Yeah, so they're all these real intricate, like black and white squiggles almost.
yeah. There's
That
like a pattern inside everything. I noticed that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really.
And it goes so deep when you look at the cards in person. Um, but they're like I think it took the person a few years to make the deck because everything's so intricate on it. Um, because it's like 72 cards with that much detail. It's kind of
Wow.
blows my mind sometimes looking at
Yeah,
it. Um,
that's crazy.
but I really like using that card or that deck for what to move towards, just because it's called the Visionary Path Tarot,
Mm-hmm.
and it just seems to fit using future readings
Yeah.
um, for
Yeah,
it.
even I feel like even the cards, the way the cards are drawn, kind of even I don't know, backs up the top reading as well. But yeah, I liked what you said wrote here too. The Nine of Swords, usually a card of mental anguish and anxiety, comes to say that there will always be fear with change. but courage is not the absence of fear, but action in the face of fear. And then the Two of Swords is often a card showing an action when presented with two options. So like there's going to be two options, a crossroads, which indicates a change, and then you have the Nine of Swords as well. Like
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But it's like that knight, he's armored up, man. He's got his sword, he can handle it.
yeah,
There's nothing he can't handle.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Not to say
yeah,
it's easy, but it's definitely doable.
yeah. Well, it's good.
Um,
I mean, I really liked this reading a lot. It was yeah, I liked everything that you had written here too, and I mean, I love all the cards too. They're just so much fun to look at.
yeah, well, and that's like
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
yes,
I love the feeling of tapping into that and I don't know, being able to look at some cards there and tell a story. Yeah, and
yeah.
then you've got the adventure, that's the one from the 40 Servants by Tommy Kelly.
You were talking about
Um,
yeah,
yeah. Um, which that's just such a fun, like, I just imagine this lady with a top hat levitating down a canyon. It's kind of
yeah,
fun.
yeah. And that's the one you were saying earlier. You
Someone's
brought up
being
that
adventurous.
specific one of like kind of engaging with the adventure spirit and cause your day to be more adventurous just to doing that and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
there's
that, yeah, that's really good. And that kind of even almost kind of, I feel like backs up the top reading as well, too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
same. Yeah, it's like get out there, be adventurous. It's like the magic school bus lady, Miss Frizzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make mistakes, get messy.
The Magic School Bus. Nice. It's been a while since I've seen that one. Oh, man.
No, my daughter was born in 2010, but boy did she grow up with 90s cartoons thanks to me.
Yeah. Nice. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Do you have a favorite one?
Oh, I loved the Batman animated series.
Dog, I
I
got so scared by those when I was little. Well, the Scarecrow one, I did.
Yeah,
That was
yeah, yeah.
rough.
Um, but I like that was I think that and Power Rangers was what got me up Saturday.
Nice. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I guess, I mean, we can, if you don't mind, let me see. I was
Yeah, I
gonna
think
look
you
through
had a
here.
couple more questions.
Yeah. I had a question in here. Well, my friend asked, how would you define divination? But that seems like it's kind of a loaded question.
No, I mean, I think divination as a definition is like trying to well, I think that pulls into my definition of magic, which is, causing change on a small scale to cause change on a large scale. It's if you try to do like even Solomonic magic and like the old grimoires and stuff like that, down to like conjure or quote unquote witchcraft that is popular these days. All of it is you're doing something symbolic to create change.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
Wow.
I see divination as the opposite of that. You're you have something symbolic and you're allowing it to be changed by the world so that you can augur information from it.
That's interesting.
So where
Okay.
where a spell is a change that goes out,
Yeah.
divination is change coming back in so that you can get information.
Oh, wow. That's a
But
really good
it's
way to describe it.
the
I'm glad I asked that question. Gosh.
yeah.
Dang, that's really good.
Um, but yeah, I think there's some it's like the as above, so below, as without, so within the Hermetic teachings. There's a reflection on levels of scale, and
Yeah.
that the tarot cards are a small enough scale to reflect the scale that we're on.
Yeah.
Um, there's
That's
something along
interesting.
those lines. Like
Yeah.
these are, I certainly don't claim to be an expert in this stuff, but it
Yeah.
is conclusions I've come to from experience, anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this gets into another question I want to ask, which is kind of gets tricky in my head though. Because it
Yeah,
was the idea of like chance and like the luck of the draw and things like that. And the I guess the difference between prophecy and chance, because um, when you described it, divination is coming like stuff from out there kind of coming back in. It kind of makes me think of almost in a way like luck or working with Ganesh or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and but then there's the idea, I guess, with prophecy too, is you can almost kind of like speak things into being. And so does is that ever working? But that sounds more like magic, like you're talking about, like this
Yeah,
going out.
and
Okay.
I think you can use the tarot to help do that. Like, I mean, that's these days, that's mainly what I use the tarot for, is like, um, is to kind of counteract. Because, like, I think one of your other questions was asking about jinxing stuff, like if you know
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah, because now
Like
that I know the
these are
reading
all
with the
tied
band,
together.
it's like if
Yeah.
I do that, it's like am I at that point performing magic in a way, or it almost feels like communion in a weird way because you have this coming in and then I'm
Hmm.
interacting with it to go back out, and it feels like a weird communication back and forth or something.
Well, because it's a tarot reading like this one is a prophecy that's up to you to fulfill.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you're like
Because you
working
don't
with the
have to.
fates or something. I don't know if that's the right
Yeah,
way to say it. Yeah.
and well, because I think that the um we're all on our own path. We're all like I am in the camp of belief that says we chose to come here for some reason. We chose this life or this incarnation, or maybe it was chosen for us, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there is there's a goal to it. There's a purpose. Um,
Sorry,
and
I wasn't I'm totally with you on that. I just laughed a little bit because in my head I was thinking like there's times in my life where I'm just like, why? Like you're just
yeah,
like, why? Why would I be
100%.
so dumb? That's why
Yeah.
I laughed. But yeah. So anyway,
Um,
go.
but yeah, it's
We
hmm,
chose to be here. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail
yeah.
your
No,
thought or
no, you're
anything.
good. Because I was trying to pull it back because it's like trying to answer these three questions that are all tied into each other
Yeah.
succinctly. Uh, and I think that the tarot, or that I should say, magic is probability manipulation at its core. That's why you don't see magicians winning the lottery. Um,
Yeah.
no, seriously, because
Yeah,
like
that's good. That's a good point.
so if the odds of winning the lottery are like 1 in 20 million, you could cast a very successful spell to make it 1 in 10,000 and still never win.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
um, you've still had some effect on it, but you'd still have to be extremely lucky in one way or another. So I think magic works best when it's things that are already likely, or things that you do in concert with other things that are mundane. Like if you want a
Yeah.
job, you could do all the spells in the world, but if you don't go ahead and put your resume in, what does the magic have to work through?
Yeah.
Um, these things have to have like there has to be some sort of reasoning to it, some sort of internal logic. And I find as long as it makes sense to the person doing the magic, it tends to err on the side of success. Maybe not, I definitely wouldn't claim is always successful by any means, but
Yeah.
I've had enough results that were close enough to what I was asking for that it's like, well, okay, we're doing something here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's mainly what I use divination for these days, is whether or not to do magic, or whether the idea of magic that I have that I want to do is a good idea to perform. Like like even when it comes to wealth magic, like um everybody wants more money, but like if part of my purpose in being here, like because that's the thing, I think whatever purpose you have to be here is always going to override whatever magic you do.
Mm.
And I mean, maybe
Wow.
you could do some magic specifically to change that purpose. I'm certainly not at that level if you can, but if I need to learn something by not having enough money or not having what I think is enough money, so it forces me to work with what I have,
Yeah.
um, that may be a very important lesson I need to learn. So I might do a successful spell to get $5,000 and then suddenly my car craps out and I have to buy a $5,000 car. It's like
Yeah.
there'll be some sort of monkey's paw to it. And I've had that happen enough times that now I use tarot to avoid that.
Yeah, I would too. That sucks. That
Yeah.
sounds pretty bad.
Um,
Wow.
yeah.
I like what you said there. Your purpose is always going to override the magic. That's really
I think
interesting.
so.
Yeah.
I mean, ask me that in 2 months, I might feel totally different, but at least where I am now, I think that's the case.
Yeah.
Um, I mean,
Yeah.
I think magic can be like one of my favorites. If you ever want to do or see if a spell is successful, I think my favorite one is asking for a half peeled orange
Okay.
because it's
Yeah.
something totally random.
Yeah.
I've been able to conjure it 3 separate times
What? No way.
where you just get a half peel. Like, so for instance, like one of the times it was like I was working at a IT job where I had one other coworker and I had done a sigil in this case for a half peeled orange, just messing
Yeah.
around. And because it's something, it's perfect because you're never going to find one randomly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just you can't. Someone's going to finish peeling the orange and eat it, or it's going to be unpeeled. Um, and it just so happened that my coworker that I worked with, I went up front to help a customer. He started peeling his orange that he brought for lunch. Decided he had to use the bathroom halfway through and set it on my desk on his way to the bathroom. Like
Did you eat it?
totally explainable. Oh no, like
You
you
should have
don't
been
touch
like,
it, you don't do anything with
this
it.
was given to me by the gods. Now I'm eating this. Like,
But I
held
like
this
came
forth.
back in. I came back, because I hadn't seen him start eating lunch when I went out to get the
Eh,
customer. And I come back into the back room from getting the customer, and
that's
there it
awful.
is, a half peeled orange
Yeah.
sitting on my desk. And I'm like, well,
I
all
would have been
right.
like, nope, this is my orange now. I just I cast a spell and
Um,
here it is. Man, that's crazy. That's so wild. Yeah.
yeah, I even saw once I think the second time I did it, I saw where someone on a Florida license plate that's got the big orange on the side,
Yeah.
they had put like a orange peel sticker over half of it. So it looked like a
So
half peeled
weird.
orange on their license plate.
That's
Yeah.
so weird. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
But it's,
crazy.
it's that's one of the reasons why I love just messing around with it because like I mean I didn't have to do that. I was such a skeptic. I had to do that shit 3 separate times before I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I did it. I know it's me doing it. What else
Yeah.
can I do with this?
That's
Like
wild.
I
That's
was
so
so
cool.
skeptical of it at first, but it really is. It'll earn your trust the more you mess around with it, I find.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Man, that's cool. Yeah, half peeled orange.
Yeah, if you
Well,
want to try and conjure something to see if you can, that's the best one in my opinion.
yeah. Well, actually, let's see. The only, I guess, I mean, we've been through a lot of these actually. There was one
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, which I don't know. It could, I mean, we could always aim for a different time and let's, because it could be a whole rabbit hole to go down. But it was the how the tarot relates to the Kabbalah, however.
Yeah, that's kind of like its own whole we could do another 30,
Yeah.
45 minutes on that.
Okay.
And I would but I would love to or maybe I already sent you the little like poster image and like the one of the
I think
first
you
things I
did.
sent.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
that I to me you can either learn the tarot and use that to learn the tree of life or learn the tree of life and use that to learn the tarot. They are both so like you only need to learn one because the other one will teach you
Yeah,
the the other one.
that's so fascinating to me. It's just absolutely strange how much maps onto the tree of life. And I often wonder about that. I'm like, is just the weird way like we're relatable creatures and everything kind of exists in reality with relationships. And I'm like, do we just there's probably some of both, I guess, where we're making it a map on, but then at the same time it does, and then it's almost like, well, we're not doing this because it's just too much. It's like the
So
tarot
maybe
maps
this
onto it,
is
the tree of life. Yeah, sorry.
no, you're good. But it's just like you can do the same thing with the chakra system and the meridian system from Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the most fascinating things I learned about was that um, one of the first, like the one of the oldest human fossils that we have, or like human remains that we have, had tattoos all over his body.
Wow.
Um, and the tattoos, I don't think they discovered this for like 30 or 40 years until like the right two people met up at a conference or something. But just recently, they found that the tattoos on his body perfectly match up with the meridian system from Chinese medicine. And
Wow.
this corpse was from like 10,000 BC
That's
or
crazy.
6,000 BC or something like that.
Yeah.
So this is their, it's something that is integral to the human experience that
Yeah.
we've known about for a long time,
Yeah. Yeah.
to some degree or another.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it's just, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating because it's like it just it does so much stuff maps onto that pattern in like cosmic levels and even like weird like particular levels, and like you're
mhm.
saying the chakra system along with what I think alchemy maps onto it as well, and
Yeah.
probably a lot of astrology does. It's just, yeah, it's that. And now that in the tarot, I didn't even know that till I think you had said that. Or yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's the tarot isn't as weird to me just because the tarot is very much, I think, designed like the tree of life came first and the tarot was designed around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's at least some evidence for that. I'm no tarot historian, but I've read a little bit about it, and it's just it works out too perfectly to have been a coincidence. Same way
Yeah.
like glasses fit noses too well.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Well, I can let you go here. I was
Yeah,
gonna
man.
fire off some quick questions. Hopefully they're quick. These ones
Yeah.
I didn't send you because I just added them on it in. But I just like asking people because when I
Hmm.
went to I've been to India a few times, and I go in there and visit like some kids. They're not necessarily orphans but have rough lives. But the kids will always ask you just like kind of simple, straightforward questions. So they're just
Yeah.
kind of like favorites. So I kind of took that
Yeah.
from them. So do you have a favorite movie?
I
Sorry, I'm
would
putting you on the
say
spot too. If
no,
you
it's
can't
all good.
answer, because these are hard.
Yeah,
Favorites are
no.
always hard too. So,
I think if I had to pick one, the movie that impacted me the most the first time I saw it was Fight Club.
oh, nice.
Um,
That's
yeah, the just the idea of having the self that you want to be within yourself trying to fight you to get out. Like I love that idea.
yeah, that's cool. It's a good one. All right. So, favorite book? Do you have a favorite book?
Um, I would say book series would be I think it's called the Commonwealth series by Peter F. Hamilton.
Okay.
It's a fiction story. He wrote it's a five-part series. The first book in it is called Pandora's Star. But it's some of the best fiction I've ever read, and definitely the best science fiction I've ever read. Um, I know
Commonwealth
it's kind of
series.
I know it's kind of well the what you should just remember is Pandora's Star.
Pandora's Star.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, because if you start from there, you'll find the other four books no problem. But
Okay.
they're so good. Like just
Really
the
nice.
man's yeah. So it's a future where humanity travels from planet to planet using trains and wormholes. So we
Whoa.
have this galactic civilization and no spaceships.
Whoa. That's cool. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
it's really fascinating. And like
Yeah.
he really does just build the whole story around, okay, what if we just did wormholes and like what would human society look like spread out not amongst the stars but just across the planets? and
That's
it's
interesting.
really really good.
Yeah, that would be yeah, that's just a fun idea to explore. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Pandora's Star, right?
Hmm.
Okay, cool, cool. Do you have a favorite animal?
Otters, hands
Otters,
down. If I could
nice.
be any animal, that would be it. They just look like they have the most fun.
They do, that's for sure. All right, do you have a favorite color?
Purple, I
Purple.
guess,
Nice.
as a combination of red and blue. Like it's weird. I a lot of like my um stuff involves around two things becoming one other thing.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. I've a that's it. Yeah, that's a good one to choose. And that fact that you said a combination of red and blue, I always like that as well because it makes me think of um and especially if you go out west, you have the heaven and earth. It's like earth is I mean, you look
Yeah.
at the sky, it's just blue, and then you have the red rock and in like
Hmm.
Utah, it's just red, the red
Well,
soil, red earth.
there's this really cool picture of the planet Pluto that I actually keep as my phone wallpaper because the spectrum they took it in, the whole thing looks like red and blue. Um,
Really? That's cool.
yeah, Pluto is beautiful taken in the right photos. The some of
Yeah.
the
And
pictures we have of it recently.
that is Hades, right?
Hmm.
With the death card. There you go. It's tying it all
Yeah,
back. Wow.
exactly.
Favorite
Yeah.
card. Sweet.
Wonder why.
Nice. Do you have so this is probably a good one to ask because of your shirt too. Do you have a favorite flower?
I don't really. I love I keep an amaryllis in my house that I love. It's like I kind of view it as almost one of my pets.
Oh,
It's like a big white flower.
okay.
But we got it when we got this house and just been keeping it around since then. Um,
Cool.
but it's more I have a favorite herb if that counts, the
Yeah, what's
mugwort.
that? Mugwort? Yeah. I've
Yeah.
heard that can be used for a lot of stuff. What do you use it like that for?
Um, I use it as a lunar herb. Um, There, have you ever heard of the songwriter Orpheus from Greek legend?
Yeah, yeah, I love the story of
Yeah.
Orpheus. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a bunch of hymns to the different planets and different stars and stuff like that.
Orphic
And
hymns, yeah.
the Orphic hymn to the moon, it says to burn mugwort while you sing it. And that was a really cool experience I had the first time I did that.
What? I'm gonna try that.
Because Well, yeah, because it's some like don't ask me how, but they go together. Like they're both very lunar.
What?
Doing it
Okay.
without the smell of mugwort burning is not as good as doing it with the smell of mugwort
I'm
burning.
definitely
I
doing this. Yeah, I'm gonna try it.
couldn't tell you why. It's witchy.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that. That sounds cool. All right, do you have a favorite band or type of music or anything like that?
I'm a little all over the place with music. I think recently, um, there's a band called Genghis Tron that um
Never. That sounds cool.
So their first two albums are like noise metal, and I really really loved them when I was in high school. They're real abrasive to listen to. But they recently got back together after being apart for like 15 years and came out with an album called Dream Weapon that is just amazing.
Really? I'll have
Um,
to check that out. Genghis Tron.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. Look for the newest one because like the older stuff you can it's still listenable to me because it's nostalgic, but it's like I wouldn't expect anyone else to listen. it
Yeah, I like how you describe that. It's real abrasive. But
is.
yeah. All right. Well, the last thing was just, I guess, where can people find you? Like, do you have a website or links or anything like that?
Yeah. Anybody wants a tarot reading, I'm either on Instagram at treefish tarot. That's treefish tarot. All one word like an Instagram handle. And I'm also on I have a store on Fiverr where I sell readings and tarot lessons, which is fiverr.com/treefish tarot. Um, but that's kind of the name I have for myself because Fleetwood is a the Old English word for a forest with a brook running through it. So very fertile hunting ground.
Tree fish. Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tree
okay.
fish taro.
Yeah, I was wondering why that was, but that's okay. That
Uh-huh.
makes more sense. Okay, yeah, and I'll put the
Yeah.
links in the notes and stuff when I post this
Okay.
and everything too.
Yeah,
But
I'll shoot you those links.
all right, cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for doing this. Man, I'm sorry I kept you so long. We've been going for like over
No,
2 hours, but this has
it's
been
great.
fascinating.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
this has been such a good conversation.
thanks, man.
And I'd be happy to be on one of your evening chats sometimes. That'd be
Yeah,
really fun.
too. Yeah, whenever you want to. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes I just fire it up, sporadically if I just feel like it, if I have free time. So if you see me on there, a lot of times if it's live streaming, I'll put the link there and you can just click it and hop on. Yeah. But
Sweet.
yeah, I'd love to talk again too, and we could even dig into the tarot with the lining up with the tree of life and all that and the
Yeah, that'd
Kabbalistic
be
system.
great.
And yeah, that'd be fun. Well, thanks again so much, man. So yeah,
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed this. This has been a great time. So
me too. Thanks so much for having
well,
me.
I'll end this here. Well, let's see. How do I? There.